Good morning. My name is Samantha Charles, and on behalf of the Paper Manufacturers Association and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, I extend a warm welcome to you. Today's session is focused on SAGERS, or the South African Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reporting System. SAGERS is a greenhouse gas reporting module for registration and submission of greenhouse gas emissions in terms of the reporting regulations. We have Sindisiwe Mashele. She is the Director for Climate Change Monitoring and Evaluation for the GHG Inventory and Systems at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Sindisiwe will take us through the various steps involved with registering and navigating the system.
Thank you, Samantha. So I'll be taking you through the South African National Greenhouse Gas Reporting System. My presentation is going to cover the regulations because this is the basis for reporting in the system, just to give an overview of the requirements for reporting. And then I will then move through the registration module of the system. So I'll take you how to register an account, and also how to then set up a new data provider registration process in the system. And then the part 3, I will take you through the reporting modules that we have in the system, covering the land sector activities as well as combustion activities, and then take you through other features that we have in the system that allows you to make the process of reporting to the department easier. So with regards to the regulations, the National Greenhouse Gas regulations are the legal framework for reporting greenhouse gases in the country. So these regulations were promulgated in 2017. So they have been implemented since 2017 up to 2023. Since the promulgation of the regulations, we've had 7 reporting cycles. So emissions need to be reported between January and March for the previous calendar year every year. So we've also amended the regulations in 2020. I'll take you through that later on what it means for the forestry activities. So the regulations have these broad categories to give clear guidance in terms of what is required, who is supposed to report, what needs to be reported. It also provides guidance on the reporting requirements. And in the latest amendments, which are the areas that are highlighted in red, we also gave clarity in terms of verification and validation of the information that's submitted under these regulations. It also provides guidance in terms of how the information that is reported under this regulation should be kept confidential. It also provides guidance on record keeping. We also have different annexures to the regulations. So Annex 1 gives guidance on the list of activities that must be reported. And then Annex 2 is the registration template. This registration template has been translated to the online reporting system, so it does not need to be filled in manually at the moment. And then we have Annex 3, which is the reporting template. It has information on what needs to be reported. And also we have Annex 4 and 5, which is the submission of country-specific emission factors and registration of standby generators, which might not be applicable to this audience. So with regards to Annex 1, and forestry activities, the regulations were amended to include certain thresholds that are applicable to the sector. So if you have plantations that are above 100 hectares, it means that you are classified as a data provider under these regulations, and therefore you need to report, as you might see in the slide. The activities for plantation include biomass burning, harvested wood products, land converted to forest land. So all these activities are applicable and need to be reported. So when I take you through the registration modules, I will show you how to then register these activities. So we have other supporting tools, which I think the methodological guidelines were covered in details in the previous webinar. So the regulations provide guidance on who and what needs to be reported. So the reporting guidelines cover the how, but we also have the verification guidelines, which then guide us in terms of once the information is submitted into the system, what needs to be done in terms of validation and verification of such information. And then now we have the online reporting tool to make it easier for data providers to report information in an online based platform. So that's what the SAGERS enables you to do, in that the information can be submitted easily on an online platform. Just to cover other key aspects in terms of registration and reporting. So here, in terms of registration, it must be noted that while reporting needs to be done at facility level, the thresholds that we have in Annex 1, for example, the 100 hectares, is applicable as a data provider level. So if as a company you have more than one site, but as a whole, the threshold exceed 100 hectares, it means then you need to register those activities. With respect to combustion activities, also this principle is also applicable. So if you have more than one combustion activity, if the sum of those activities exceed 10 megawatt threshold, it means then you need to register as a data provider under the regulations. So broadly, the applicability of the regulation covers a number of sectors, but I think the ones that are relevant for this webinar are the stationary combustion of fuels, and also the follow activities, but also registration is based on self-assessment. So you have to assess as a company whether you are classified as a data provider under these regulations by going through the listed activities, which are in Annex 1 of the regulations, and assess. The second step then is assess whether you meet the reporting thresholds for the different activities. Then the next step is then to register on the SAGERS and also then report on an annual basis. And this is a legal requirement. So you need to ensure that you comply to the requirements of these regulations. So with regards to reporting, as I have indicated previously, reporting must be done on an annual basis. So you report, now in 23, you'll be required to report information for the 2022 calendar year. And this information needs to be submitted by the 31st of March of each year. So then now I will move over then to the registration module. I don't know if there are any questions here, or I can then move on to the actual system and show you then how to register.
Anybody with any questions, just use the raise hand button if you've got any burning questions, and we can address them straight away, or we can continue. Sindisiwe, I don't see any hands shooting up, so you can continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then this part, I will cover how to then register an account in the system, noting that registration on the system is in two parts. You have to register an account, and then once that account is established, then you have to register as a data provider, a new data provider. So it's in the way I would explain it is that you first register the person that's responsible for the company, and then the second part is when you register the company details. So then the first part, I will take you then how to register an account. So to initiate any submission on the system, you have to go to the SAGERS portal. So this link is available also on the DFFE website under links. So just to note that we have two portals for the public sites. The public production, this is where official information needs to be submitted, but we also have then a training module. So it's the same module as the official one, but the data that you report or anything that you do on the training module is not kept, but it can be used for training purposes, or if you want to get familiar in terms of how the system works. And then the second part, once you're there, then you can, to register an account, you click on log in, and then you can go to the part where it says register account. And then this screen will come up. So here you can then capture your basic information, and also your employer's details. But what's critical here is the registration of the account type. Under account type, there are 3 different account types that we have in the system. We have the ACO account, the ECO account, or consultant, or other. So with the ACO account, this is the primary person that's responsible for certifying the submissions that are made on the system. So not everyone in the system can be able to submit the records. And we have then also the ECO or consultant. This is someone that you can assign to, and then give access for them to help you prepare the submissions in the system. So this can either be a person that's within the company, an emission control officer, or a consultant that's outside the company. I will show you later on how you can then assign consultants to your profile. And then the other is an account that's not linked to any organization, but they can be able to do a submission to request approval for country-specific emission factors where applicable. So in cases where you make a mistake and you select an incorrect account type when you're registering, this cannot be changed on your side. So you have to contact us and we'll assist you on how to rectify that. So then the next part, after the account, which is also critical, is the security questions. So when you set up your account for the first time, you need to set up 5 security questions. So when you're making any submittals on the system, you'll be asked these questions to verify that you are the person that submitted the information. So this serves as an electronic signature for you, so that we can confirm that your submission was submitted by you. Then the next process is the final review, where you confirm that all the information that you provided under the basic information and account type is correct. So then a temporary password will be sent to your registered email. So then you will receive an email then with your login details. But then the next step is then for you to select that you are responsible for GHG reporting. So when you log in on the system for the first time, you will see that you will not be able to see any submissions that you can initiate. So what you need to do first is activate this account. And for you to activate this account, you have to select the submittal group under My Account, and then indicate that you will be responsible for GHG reporting. And once this is done, it means then your account is active. Then you can be able to do submissions on the system. This does not mean that the company is registered. So this only covers the registration of the account and the responsible person. So then the second part to registration is the registration of the new data provider. So now I will be taking you through the process of registering as a data provider on the system. So once your account is registered, you can initiate a registration of a data provider, which is a registration of the company or the sites that you have. So for the forestry sector, as I've indicated, these are the possible applicable activities that need to be registered. But in addition to this, there can be combustion activities, which I'm also going to cover in the reporting module. If you have any combustion activities, on how to then report those. So once your account is activated, as you might see, this screen is slightly different than the previous one. Once your account is activated, there are different submittals that you can initiate on the system. So here, to register a new data provider, you need to go to the tab which says Register New Data Provider. And then this form then comes up. So in this form, you have to then fill in your data provider information. These are the details for the company, not the person who's responsible for the company. So then you click on Create New Data Provider. So you then in this form capture the basic details of the company, including in this form the contact person of that company. So it can be the same details as the person who's registered as an ACO, or it can be someone else. Then the next part, then, which is critical, is then the registration of the activities that you are supposed to report. So the way the system is designed is that your reporting template that is generated on an annual basis is linked to your registration information. So in this in this section is where you then capture the activities that you are conducting. As you can see here, the first activity that's captured is 3B1A. So here you then have to select the activity and then also fill in the related information. So we have to assess whether you meet the reporting threshold. So you have to then declare the forest land area that's under your operational control. And when we assess your registration, we'll then be able to make an assessment whether you meet the regulations. So there are a number of activities that can be added here. So once you capture the details of the first one, you can then click on this section where then it allows you to add more activities as you wish, depending on what activities that you have. But for forestry activities, certain activities like biomass burning, you'll have to add all of those, and this activity is for combustion. So if your combustion devices exceed 10 megawatts, that activity also needs to be captured here. So once you have completed all of that, the system also allows you to provide additional supporting documentation. So in this case, if you have more than one plantation area, you can then attach the details here under the attachment, and then review the submission where it shows you if there's missing information, it shows you which section has missing information, and then the next process is then to submit. As you can see here, it's where you then have to fill in your security questions and then submit the form. So once your registration is submitted, it goes through a review on the authority side. So this is some of the steps. This is just to ensure that you have registered all the applicable activities. So in cases where we find that there's missing information, the form can be sent back to you in the step, and then you are then requested to provide additional information. If the information is then complete, we issue an acceptance letter showing the details of the company and the applicable activities that need to be reported on an annual basis. So then that's then completes the registration process on the system. The next step then is the reporting of the activities once you've set up an account and also registered as a data provider. I'd like to check if there are any questions before I move on to the second part to show you how then to report on the activities.
Nothing from the audience, Sindisiwe.
Okay. So then the next part then I will take you through then the process of reporting on the system. So there's two processes that I'm going to take you through: how to report the land sector activities and how to report combustion activities if you have any. So once your registration is established on an annual basis, the department will issue a reporting obligation, which will show up on your dashboard, which shows you when the report was generated and when it is expected, the due date of the report. So this report is generated on the 1st of January of each year, where you then supposed to then come in on the system and report the emissions for the previous calendar year. So on the dashboard, this section then takes you to the reporting template on the system. So in this case, you will see here, these are the activities for the for plantations. So in the form, you will see only activities which you registered in the registration form. And the first details then you have to then capture for land activities, because these activities are not calculated within the system. The guidance is on the MRV tool and the carbon sequestration guidelines on how to then calculate these emissions. And also because of the high complexity of the methodology that's used to estimate these emissions, it's not the calculation logic is not built in within the system. So what you have to then capture for these activities is provide a brief calculation description on how the emissions were calculated under the comment box. And then the next step then is, the next step then is capturing those emissions that are calculated outside the system. So it's an easy process of reporting. Once you have calculated the emissions based on the guidance from the guidelines, which I think the previous webinar went into details in terms of how to calculate those emissions, you then come in here and select the tier method that's used. So the tier method is whether you use default parameters to calculate the emissions, or you use country-specific emission factors, then parameters, then that will be tier 2, or you use your own values, that will be tier 3, and then you will then complete the annual emissions for the activity that you're reporting on, for CO2, for methane, and also for N2O. You will notice here that we also have notation keys. So if a certain greenhouse gas is not applicable to your activity, you can then select here under notation keys. There are different options like not applicable or not estimated. So it doesn't mean that if this comes up, you have to report on all activities if they're not applicable. And also to note here for forestry activities, in cases where the emissions are a sink and not a source, the system allows negative values when you report under annual emissions. So then the next step will then attach the calculation files, which shows how those emissions that are reported are calculated. So then you will attach the MRV tool, which shows how the emissions were estimated, so that we can then be able to verify this on our side when we receive the report. So that is basically it for the land sector activities, because the emissions for these activities are not calculated within the system. So it's just a matter of, once you register, you need to capture what you calculate outside the system and provide then the supporting documentation. But it is slightly different for combustion activities. So then the next slide, I will take you through the process of reporting combustion activities within the system. So combustion activities are calculated within the system because the logic of calculating these emission factors is quite simple. You need an emission factor and also the related activity that's linked to this to the emission factor, and also the NCVs. So the SAGERS has built in calculation logic for combustion activities, where it makes it easier for reporting, where you just have to provide the fuel that was used, and then the system will then calculate the emissions. So for this sector, I just highlighted Annex 3 to say that this could be some of the activities that are applicable for this sector that need to be reported. But also, just to also note that you also need to make sure that you also assess the threshold, because if you are below the 10 megawatt threshold, it means then you don't have to report these activities. It's not mandatory to report these activities, but if the threshold is above 10 megawatt thermal, then it means then you have to register combustion activities as well and report this. So for combustion activities, tier 1, similar to the land sector activities, it means that you are using default emission factors to estimate your emissions. And then tier 2 means that you're using country-specific emissions data. And then tier 3 means you're using plant-specific data in the system. So the system allows you to select the option that you want to use, but noting that now for most of the activities, you only allowed to either use tier 2 or tier 3. Tier 1 was allowed earlier when the regulations were promulgated, but we are moving towards using tier 2 or 3 because we need to move to higher tiers to ensure that we reduce the uncertainty of the emissions that we are estimating. So reporting of fuel combustion activity is a four-step process. You first then report the fuel used, and then you select the NCV type that you need to use, and then you report the fuel consumption of that activity and select then the applicable tier method, noting also though with respect to the tier method, you need to note the requirements under the regulations because it specifies which tier method needs to be used for each activity. So here, I'm just going to use just one example of how you would do that. It's not specifically for the activities that might be applicable for this sector, but the principles are the same. So once you have your report generated on the system, you will then be able to see then the activities that are registered. So for combustion activities, these are the activities. This is how the template is designed. So here you come in and then you have to add an item. So adding an item means that you add the activity of this means that you report the fuels that were used by your company. So first you would select the fuel type and then select the NCV and then report the consumption. The system will then calculate the activity data in terajoules. Just to note is that it is crucial to add all the activity details before you move on to the emissions details. So if you have more than one fuel, you must add all the fuels here before you then move on to the section which then calculates the emissions. So this is just to demonstrate how the system works. So there will be a drop-down menu which shows you the different fuels that we have in our database. So then you will select the applicable one. Once that is selected, you will then need to select the NCV type. That is used to then estimate the emissions. The country-specific emission calorific values are built into the system, but if you want to use your own values, the system allows you to enter your own values as well. This is just to show you that there are different options that we have available for the NCV selection within the system. So you can select the appropriate one. And then the next step then is the calculation then of the emissions. So here, this is just to demonstrate if you have more than one fuel, then you can also click on add item, and then you'll be able to add another fuel that you might have to report on. So, and then the next step then it is the emissions section. So once all that information is captured on the fuel that was used, the NCVs that are applicable, you then have to then come here and select tier method, either tier 1 or tier 2 or 3, depending on the regulations and what information you have on your side. Once that is selected for tier 1 or tier 2, for example, the system will then calculate your annual emissions based on that information. So this is a calculation that is not done outside the system, but inside. So it makes it easier for reporting.
Sorry, Sindisiwe. No, saw Julie, you had your hand up. Julie had her hand up. I don't know if it's been addressed.
I don't have my hand, but thank you for
asking.
asking.
Oh, sorry, it was up. Okay, beg your pardon. Carry on, Sindisiwe.
Okay. So you'll have to select the tier method for all the greenhouse gases, because the transitional requirement that we had in the regulations, you will see that for combustion activities you can still use tier 1 for N2O and methane, but for CO2 you'll have to then select tier 3 or tier 2. So once all of this is done, the system will then display the resulting emissions for your activities on the side. So here it will summarize all the emissions. So if also you reported on the land sector activities, you'll then be able to see the total sum of your emissions on this tree view on the side. So once all of that is done, then the next step is to review the submission and then submit the information using the security questions. I don't know if there are any questions here, or I can move on.
Nothing not that I can see, so carry on. Thank you, Sindisiwe.
Okay, so we have other features that are in the system that you can use during the reviews of your submissions. Maybe you want to follow up with the department on the status of your submissions. We have the correspondence functionality where you can send messages directly to us in the department, and will then be able to respond to those. So let's say, for example, you are working on a registration submission. So this will show you the messages that were submitted in the system, and if they have been read, so you are able to track if your messages are being received or not, and whether there's messages that we have not received on our side. For example, let's say you submitted a registration submission on the system and you have not received approval yet. You can go to check submittals and access the submission, and then go to the correspondence section, where you can then send a message to us. And also the record of this messages is also kept in the system so that you can then be able to know exactly what happened. Let's say there's change of accounting officers in between, the previous person will know exactly the communication that was done with the department previously, because all this information under the correspondence functionality is kept. And the other feature that we have in the system is My Account, where you can be able to manage your account information and updates where required. And also you can change your password and your PIN, update your security questions, link consultants that you might want them to assist you with the submission of information in the system. And you can also be able to see, let's say you have more than one data provider profile registered in the system, you can be able to see all that information and download the summary of such information. So the other feature that we have is the linking of consultants and preparers to your account under My Account option. So let's say you want a consultant to come in and assist you with the process of reporting on the system. So under My Account, you are then able to go to consultants and then enter the email address of the consultant that you want to assist you. So, but just to note that the person must already have an account in the system. So you cannot be able to search if they are not registered themselves. Just that they must register as a ECO or consultant instead of accounting officer. So once you find the details of the account that's already in the system, then you can grant this person permission basically to access your data and also to input any information for you in the system. So once you have found the account, then the next step then is to provide them with what permissions do they actually have in the system, because there's different option. You can either assign the person as a preparer or just a viewer of your information. And also you can indicate the effective dates when this can be applicable, and also give them an expiration date. So in the cases maybe where you have a contract, you don't want someone to have access to your data beyond that. So it allows you then to also select the expiration date of when this person has access to your data. So yeah, you can then let's say you have more than, so there's different submissions that we have in the system. Let's say you only want the person to assist you with the submission of the GHG reports, but then you don't want them to have access with regards to deregistration or modifying your registration information. So then you can select here exactly what you want them to have access to and up to what time. So the other feature that we have in the system is the changing of accounting officer. Let's say you were responsible for a particular company, but then now there's a new person that comes in. So this ensures that you don't lose any information in the system when people move. So if a new person comes in, they have to initiate the process of the information that was previously registered and also they will have access to previous reports. They can come in and request the change of accounting officers within the system. So how this can be done is that once the person has established an account, they can come in then and register, click on register new data provider. But here, you're not creating a new data provider, you're transferring the details of the old company profile that's already in the system. So instead of clicking new data provider, you click link transferred data provider, or associate, no, you click on associate existing data provider. Then the system would allow you to be able to see the companies that are already in the system, and then you indicate then the company that you are responsible for. This still needs to be approved by us as SBFFE, though it's not automated approval, because we need to ensure the confidentiality of the records that are submitted within the system. So once this is initiated, you review and then submit. So once we receive this approval, we'll then request the necessary supporting documentation to prove that you are the correct person that must have access to the records that we have in the system. The other features that we have in the system, you can be able to track your submittal during the different review stages, and also have access to your acceptance letters in the cases of the GHG report or your registration submittal. So in terms of tracking your submittals, there's a section on your dashboard where you can track your submittals, and then it will show you in this case the submissions which were submitted in the last 30 days, but you can change this to the relevant period. And then you can then be able to see the different status of the submission. So you see that here it says approved, but if it's within the review, it will say something like under technical review, for example. So for registration submission, they need to be reviewed by us within 30 days. And also the reports, as per the regulations, we need to complete the review within 60 days. So the system can be able to track the number of days the submission has been sitting on the system, and then you can follow up in cases where you see that the status, for example, is not moving in, and you need to finalize your registration. You are also able to go in the system and then you can download some submittal receipts also under check submittals, and you can also view the details of previous submissions that were submitted under this orange icon. The other thing that you can also do under track submittals, you can access the issuance letters, the email history between us as the department and the data providers, and you can also access the previous correspondence. You can also access the acceptance letters in the case of GHG reports. Once your report is approved, we issue a letter confirming that your emissions were approved. So you can access these letters under issuance. And under track submittals as well, as I have said, you'll be able to see the status of where your report or your registration submission is. So this shows the different status that we have for the GHG report. You can also be able to request revision or withdrawal of any submission that you have made on the system. So this is done under track submittal status as well. So you go to track submittals and you select the dates that you're interested in, because the system only shows recent reports that have been submitted. And then you can go to this section, and it then allows you to send a request for revision. Let's say you have submitted your registration information, but you see that there's something else that needs to be added. So you can request a revision of the information that you submitted. And once it's approved, the submission will be sent back to you for you to be able to add any information that you might want to add during the registration or during the process of submitting the report. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is how the SAGERS is designed, how you would then register, establish an account on the system, register as a new data provider, and then report your emissions. You will see it's quite an easy system to work with. It's not very complicated. Once you set up your registration on the system, the only thing that you will need to do on an annual basis is to report on your activity, as well as then the related emissions as a result of that activity. The registration is once off unless maybe there's certain activities that are added in subsequent years. Then the system, you can then initiate modification of the information in the system. So yeah, then this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sindisiwe. I realize it is a lot of information to take in. I want to give you all an opportunity to raise your hand if you have a question for Sindisiwe, and then we can address it here.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you very much. That was a very, very useful information session. I'm a little bit out of the loop. I wonder if you could answer in 2 sentences. Is this a requirement that's legislated for all so-called industries, polluters, parastatals, etc.? Who is actually required to complete that? And is that a legal compliance? And then that's 1. 2, how's the verification done? And then 3 is how regularly is it updated?
So the first question, is it legal? Yes, it's legal. So reporting of emissions is governed by the National Greenhouse Gas Reporting Regulations that are promulgated under the Equality Act. So, and this is not limited to only industries. Also, the basis for reporting is based on operational control. So if you have operational control to any of the activities that are listed under Annex 1 of the regulations, you need to report those activities. For example, in government, there will be waste activities that need to be reported. So the landfill sites are under the operational control of the government. Therefore, the emissions resulting from those activities will have to be reported by then the relevant authority. And this is a legal requirement that needs to be complied with. In terms of how is verification done, so we have the technical guidelines that guides us as a competent authority how we need to validate the information. So there's 2 steps to the verification of the information. So the first step is once we receive the reports, they are assigned to the experts that are relevant for the sector, and the technical expert is required to review and ensure that the correct methodologies were followed in the calculation of the emissions factors, and confirm and compare maybe different submissions just to ensure that the information that's reported is consistent and is in line with what's required in legislation. Then the second step is, if this is done and we feel there's a recommendation that the information is not sufficient, the report might be triggered for independent verification. This is a case where an independent verifier will have to be assigned by the company. So this is more detailed process than the desktop review that is done by us as a department, where they'll have to do site visits and ensure that the information that is submitted is correct. But this is not done for all the reports in the system. So for example, we have about, I don't know if I should say it, but we have about 434 data providers registered at the moment. So only 10% were triggered for independent verification, I would say, in the previous reporting cycle. So it's not something that needs to be done by all the data providers. It depends on the outcome of the first validation step that is done. In terms of how regularly this information needs to be submitted, so it needs to be submitted every year. Every year, so you'll report information. For now, we in 2023, you report information from January to December of 2022. So every year, this information needs to be submitted, and this is also a legal requirement. It's also included in the regulations.
Thank you very much. It's extremely helpful.
Thank you, Mary. Sindisiwe, we've got 2 questions in the chat. The one is from Nwabisa. She says, where can I confirm if we have any installed device for fuel combustion activities in the facility? This is a comment she received on feedback. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Not sure exactly if it makes sense, but she can come in. I'll try and respond. So we have guidance in the SAGERS of how you can estimate the capacity of your information. We also include this in the frequently asked questions that we have on our landing page. So the frequently asked question provides guidance in terms of how you then would do that assessment of whether you meet the threshold for combustion activities. So that guidance is there, and you can also reach out to us via GHG reporting email, GHG reporting at DFFE, if you have you're not clear on how that needs to be done. What we also do with regards to the assessment of the thresholds, you can submit information to us and we can confirm for you, just to ensure that you are compliant on your side. If your devices don't meet the threshold, we'll issue a letter confirming that.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Nwabisa. And then we've got another question from Carl. What file formats are supported for the supporting documents?
So There's all of the file formats are supported, so Excel, Word, PDF. It's just that when you are attaching documents, you just need to be cautious of the size, because if the size is too big, then sometimes it then becomes a challenge, but all file formats are accepted.
Carl asks, what is the size limit? Do you have any indication on what the size limit is for documents?
The ones that I have seen is, let's say the file is more than 5 gigabytes. So, but I'm not sure exactly where the exact size limit is. That's something we have to check and provide guidance on going forward.
Okay. So perhaps, Carl, you can just address that question to the email address, and I'm sure someone from the team can get back to you with a solid answer. I don't see any hands raised. So with that, I think we can probably move to close. Sindisiwe, any other comments before we do so?
Yes, thanks, Samantha. I think it's important that companies reach out to us, because we are available to provide guidance on the activities that need to be reported. So you can contact us via GHG Reporting. We're always available, so we can provide the necessary guidance and ensure that you are legally compliant on your side.